conversation with everybody. Hello.
Hello. Thank you very much.
Great. So, guess the thing that distinguishes the stream is the way that we actually talk to each other. We try and have a real conversation, with the conversation go back and forth. Sometimes all the guests start talking at the same time. That's okay. I might just be the traffic cop in this situation and ask you just to hold on for 1 minute so I can finish hearing what one guest is saying, and then the other guest can talk back. I'll talk with them. That's only just so that we don't hear four voices all at the same time. What is very specific about this conversation about, we're talking about Ethiopia and the Oromo protest and the Amhara protest today, if you're just watching and tuning in earlier online, is that there are lots of acronyms in this issue. And I'm going to ask you to be very kind to our international audience. Explain what you're talking about, who you're talking about, why this is important, so people around the region, other people outside of the region, around the world, actually understand the conversation. So as you're debating and discussing, do explain at the same time. In the conversation, very important, my co-host Malika Bilal. Here's Malika.
Thanks, Femi. So I am juggling a lot today. You can see, if the studio wants to get a shot of my computer, you can see I have open about 30 tabs because so many people online want to talk to you all. So my job will be to bring up those tweets, those video comments, and I will direct them to you all. Merera here, Getachew, Najat, and Fatsum on the phone. I hope you can hear me okay.
Oh, yes.
One yes. Najat?
Yes, I
okay, all right. And Fatsum? Okay, well, I'm going to hope that Fatsum can hear us, can hear me. So my role would be to bring in our online community and throw you tweets and video comments for you to respond to. Sound good?
Good.
Good.
All right, so guys, just so that you're used to hearing each other's voices, by way of a warm-up, I would like to know in just a sentence, what is important for you to get over today? What is the main point that you want to get over today? Marara, what's the main point you would like our audience to know today?
I think the Ethiopian regime is terrorizing millions of its citizens, and the people are being killed, detained, harassed, intimidated. That is what the world should know, and the Ethiopian government should stop killing.
All right, let me just check in. Let me check in with Fatsum. Fatsum, what's the main point that you want to get over today? Fatsum. Hello. All right, so we don't have. Yeah, Fatsum, can you hear me, Fatsum? This is good that we're on the internet, we're not on TV yet. Fatsum, this is Femi. Do you hear me?
Yeah, it's not clear, but I can hear you.
You don't hear me clearly. All right. So, Fatsum, we will work on that, because if you can't hear me clearly, we can't have a conversation. Getachew, for you, what is the main point you want to get over today? In a sentence, it is what?
Well, it is that whatever challenges are posed by people who are bent on destabilizing this country should be held in check. Whatever happens in the name of protests, in fact, is happening in a manner that destabilizes the country, in a manner that runs counter.
We will explore that in more detail, because right at the end of this warm-up, Najat, for you, what's the main point you want to get across? In a sentence, what is it?
I want the truth to emerge to the international community. Mostly we hear counter narrative of the Ethiopian government misrepresenting the truth.
Very good.
Today I just
so
want
Najat, Getachew, Marara, you set out what you wanted to do today. We will see if you can do that in 1 minute's time, live on the stream. See you in a moment. Dozens are dead following anti-government protests that swept across Ethiopia over the weekend.
We'll find out what impact this latest government crackdown will have on the country's future. I'm Malika Bilal.
And I'm Femi OK. You're in the stream. Thousands took to Ethiopia's streets over the weekend to protest against what they say is the marginalization of two of the largest ethnic groups, the Oromo and the Amhara. Demonstrators participated in various marches across the country's Oromia and Amhara region. Rights groups and opposition leaders have accused security forces of trying to control the protests in both parts of the country with gunfire, beatings, tear gas and arrests.
Now, the stream's been following the Oromo demonstrations since they began nearly a year ago. According to Human Rights Watch, at least 400 people have been killed and thousands arrested for their involvement since November. But the movement continues. Recently, the Amharas joined the protests in solidarity with the Oromos, and they're calling on the government to address similar economic and political grievances. And we'll highlight those today.
And as you see from that tweet, this tension between the two ethnic groups and the Ethiopian government has been growing. In the run-up to the weekend's demonstrations, Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn announced a ban on the protests, saying that they threaten national unity. But he stresses his government has been making efforts to address the protesters' concerns. So to help us talk about this, we're joined by Marara Gudina, a former member of parliament who is currently the chairman for the Oromo Federalist Congress. That's an opposition party representing the Oromo people. Getachew Rada is Ethiopia's communications affairs minister. He's coming to us from Addis Ababa. Najat Hamza is an activist with the Oromo community in the U.S. state of Minnesota. And Fetsun Bahane is a blogger living in Addis Ababa. Good to have you here, everybody. Getachew, when you see the video of the protesters, and there's one where a security official is kicking one of the protesters, can you explain to the rest of the world why that situation would even happen?
Look, we're not talking about peaceful protesters being challenged by government security forces. What we have here is an attempt by some rejectionist elements from the diaspora to organize through social media and all violent demonstrations, which are basically aimed at dismantling state structure and creating the kind of instability that will help them drive their own agendas and impose their own agendas on this country. So I think the government has been very, very consistent to a fault in terms of telling people that whether there are people who are expressing their concerns is not a problem for us. Whether people are interested in demonstrations is not a problem.
It has been a problem to us, Mr. Getachew. It has been a problem to us. Those who are legally registered.
In a manner
that destabilizes the country. Getachew, just hold tight for a moment because there's a response coming right back from our studio. Marara, what did you want to say?
Yeah, it has been a problem to us, those who are legally registered. You know, this is social media organized, diaspora organized. It's simple, it cannot work. Right. Millions of people, not few thousand, millions of people across Oromia, now across Amhara, the Amhara region is demonstrating, demanding their rights, demanding the accountable government, demanding the right to free expression, demanding stopping land grab, demanding stop killings. What he's talking about?
Well, there is nothing wrong with people expressing whatever concerns they have in a peaceful manner. What the government is...
The government is denying people to protest peacefully. That's the problem. You have been denying, Mr. Getachew, I know, we know each other. You have been denying people. We have several times asked, people were trying to peacefully demonstrate, empty-handed.
Dr. Marara,
gentlemen, just hold tight for a moment because I know that our online community will want to jump into the conversation too. Go ahead, Malika.
Well, picking up on this, hearing the reports of deaths and arrests, we got this tweet out of Ethiopia. This is Diriba, who says, "I'm in the capital right now. After this tweet, I know I'll be arrested, and the crime I commit is an act of terror." Of course, we have no way to verify that independently, so we talked to Al Jazeera's producer, who is in Ethiopia, and this is what she told us. She says it was very difficult difficult for her team to verify information from Addis Ababa, the government shut down social media and blocked telephone networks in some parts. She goes on to say that she's received calls from Ethiopians who feel abandoned by international media, and they're asking why she didn't go to the north and why she's not talking about those deaths. And she says it's been hard to explain the challenges of reporting without government access to these areas. So Najat, I want to bring you in here because, of course, you are on the outside. What's the information that you're getting from friends and family who are there, and do you trust it?
Just to address the prior argument that I have raised, this government has created a couple of narratives that always is designed to discredit these people who are fighting for their rights and for their basic human rights. Something like an anti-development, anti-government elements, a destabilizing element, all forms of jargons. But what it forgets to do is really address the grievances that people are facing in that country, that they're providing this government to address their grievances, and they are doing anything but doing that. And so here is the double-dipping situation that we have on our hands. First, they crack down on civil societies, international communities, journalists, and people who can verify data and, gather information on the ground, and then turn around and tell the international community that we are imagining these facts, that these are not the realities on the ground. So either you allow the international, observers from the third party to come in and verify this information and provide us with real information for the world to see.
Let's put that to the minister. Let's just put that to the minister. Minister?
Yes. Look, in this country, people have every right to demonstrate against anything they feel they are entitled to. They have every
Mr.
right
Getachew,
to...
we never had. You
Dr.
are
Marara,
refusing.
let me finish. Dr. Marara, let me
No,
finish.
you
Dr.
are
Marara
you were denying us.
making efforts after efforts.
I feel you have to listen to the minister before you respond.
Well,
so let's do that.
see,
Go ahead, Getachew.
Dr. Marara, in the succession of his makeshift party's modus operandi, has always been to use all kinds of excuses to launch a street action, which is aimed at effective
Minister,
regime
Najat
change.
mentioned some very specific, she was bringing out some very specific points. She was saying that it's actually hard to collect data, it's hard to actually, it's hard to even just communicate. Answer that directly, because you're sitting right there in the conversation with her.
This country is open for business. This country is open for the international community, and people have every right to collect whatever information they want to collect. But if you insist on, for example, the guy who tweeted earlier would assume that anything that happens by way of tweeting will result in his being arrested. But this, I will tell you, is probably utter nonsense. But simply because you want to believe in something, no matter how much information I might come up with, you still will end up believing what you want to believe.
Mr. Getachew, are you telling us your government is not terrorizing millions of citizens?
So let's
not arresting bloggers?
Yes, we hear grievances.
Journalists?
We hear the grievances loud and clear. Let's just work out.
I work with...
Hold tight for a moment, because we're just going to go round in circles. I don't want us to chase our tail for this conversation. Malika, do you want to push us on a little bit more?
Just a little bit, because it's still the same debate that I'm seeing in our studio here on Twitter. So Hafsa, who says she's on her way to Ethiopia this week, she says peaceful protesting is welcome there, but violent protesting in which property and public spaces are affected, no. So she gets pushback from Oga, who says the Oromo protests have created multiple opportunities for peaceful dialogue, only to then take bullets in response, and now they've reached the point of no return. Fatsum, I'm going to pass this over to you. Is that how you would describe what's going on?
I think we have to differentiate two things. We are talking about two protests now, and it looks like we are mixing them up. The first one is the Oromo protest. It's a months-long protest, and some of it was violent, some of it was peaceful. So we have to differentiate it and be realistic in our assessments.
Who should be blamed? Who should be blamed? The Ethiopian government? Who? Or the ordinary citizens?
Actually, we all take a blame. We all take a blame because in some instances it was the government
who is denying people.
And in other instances, no. In some instances there were armed people who have to be blamed. Let's be realistic. This is just like any other country. Ethiopia has all kinds of issues.
Are you telling
some
me the
will protest
Ethiopian government
peacefully.
is a legitimate government elected by the people of Ethiopia? Did not
Well,
rigging
of course.
massively last elections?
Let me just bring in
Frustrated
Najat.
people?
Yes.
Yes.
Let me just bring in
Yes.
Najat. Najat,
You may not
what are you trying to
accept.
add to this conversation? Go ahead, Najat, because we can't hear you all the time, so I can hear you right now. Go ahead.
My question is this. If Ethiopia claims to be a democracy and that it allows every right to its citizens, why are we seeing these graphic images all over the social media that the Prime Minister himself puts forces to combat the peaceful protesters? In a democratic society, we don't block internet, we don't block social media, we don't, decipher free expression. So you can't have, you can't bake your cakes and have it too. Either you are a democratic society that allows people to air their grievances free and, free of any reprisal or immediate danger, imminent arrest or death, or you are a dictatorship that are not allowing these people to do that and come around and say they are being violent. No, they have
For
not.
sure they are a
have not been
dictatorship
violent in
anyway.
any
All right, so
instance
let's
that we
see.
have seen
So,
so far.
guess, let's try this.
look.
You bring up a point, and then let's hear what the minister has to say. Minister,
Look,
go ahead.
Look. In any self-respecting country, any self-respecting and responsible government would expect any demonstration to meet some place, manner, and time requirements, which is
Mr.
the standard
Getachew, we
practice
asked
everywhere.
several
And of course-
hundred times
I am
a
really-
peaceful demonstration.
Murara,
You were
Murara,
denying
let-
us,
let-
denying
let
us.
me-
Murara,
let
I
me say
hear
something.
your grievances. I do
simply
not
because
hear the
you
response
keep
from the
interrupting
government.
people,
Do you
that
not want to
give
hear
you,
it?
The upper
I
hand
would
in
love
terms
to.
of the monopoly, in terms of the truth. What I am trying to say is, even the Prime Minister was very clear. We expect the people to peacefully protest, to express whatever
Minister, that
concerns,
wasn't the
whatever
point.
grievances
That
they
wasn't
have.
the point
And
that
the
Najat
government
was
has been
making.
very consistent about
You're
giving
not
every
answering the
opportunity
point
for
that
the
Najat
people
was bringing
I
up.
have
to
asked you
express-
one question, sir, and one question only. And if you don't mind answering me that directly, we can move on to the next point of argument. Because what you do is you always deflect by creating a counter narrative that has nothing to do with the reality on the ground, that has nothing to do with the question that I just posed at you. And you always do that. You deflect and you neglect to address.
Well,
the question at
I'm
hand.
not deflecting. Najat, look, we have two kinds of, as Fitsum rightly pointed out, we have two kinds of protesters. Even some protesters where people have legitimate concerns, they may turn out to be violent, but even those protesters are within the acceptable limits of what we consider to be legitimate
Najat,
protesters.
I
But
don't think
in
you're
many
gonna get a
cases,
direct
people
answer.
are being told to.
This is not an
to
answer to the question that you
dispossess
asked. But maybe that is the
weapons
answer.
from security officers and using them against security officers. And
Minister, that wasn't
under
what
such
Najat
circumstances,
asked. We do not
people
have
who
an
are
entire
question,
show,
sir,
though,
was
to try and get an
to
answer
my
to this.
question
has
that
been
why
rampant in
Minister,
are we seeing these
Najat,
targets
hold
all
tight for a
over
moment.
Oromia
Najat.
and the
for
Amhara
the
region?
government to
If
speak
you
Najat,
out
Minister.
say that
because it has
people
the
have
responsibility
full right
to protect
as a
its
citizen
people.
of Ethiopia
Get
to
touch it.
demonstrate against the government
Najat.
for whatever grievances they have to air in public.
Hold tight for a moment.
either,
Yes,
Najat, you are not
people
going to
have
get an
every
answer.
right to air their grievances.
We do
And the
not have an
government
hour show. You're
will
not going to get
address
that answer.
every
Hold tight for a
grievance
minute.
that
Minister, we're
people
going to
have.
move on.
But there are rules and regulations. There are time, place, manner requirements as far as holding demonstrations are concerned.
All right, that is not
If
the
you
answer.
have
She didn't ask about
gun-toting
demonstrations. Minister,
gangs-
hold tight for a moment. Take a pause. We are going to move on.
So funny,
Malika.
there's actually someone online who agrees with the minister. This is a comment we got from Tsede. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. She says the current protests are masterminded by exiled Ethiopians calling for revolution. They are misleading a young, unexposed population by giving them a sense of doom, and they're playing a dangerous ethnic blame game. So on that idea of the ethnic blame game, as we saw earlier, the Oromo are now joined by Amhara, another ethnic group in Ethiopia. I want you to have a listen to this video comment we got for someone who talks about why that might be significant.
At the Oromo protests and Amhara protest rallies held across Ethiopia this weekend, state forces are said to have killed up to 100 people. Why would the government go to such great lengths to avoid addressing legitimate concerns of its own citizens? Why would any government prefer to kill and maim its own people to having what would be fruitful discussions with them?
So a couple of things there. You're a former member of parliament. How would you answer his question?
The mother of all problems is Mr. Getachew's government, terrorizing millions of its citizens, refusing to engage political parties, whether outside and inside, refusing, for example, peaceful demonstration. In fact, it is you know, it is the Mr. Getacheo's government is using state terrorism against ordinary citizens, the citizens that are not armed. That's the problem, you know. They are blaming others while the Ethiopian government should be blamed for what is happening now. That's the problem. The center of the problem is the Ethiopian regime, who is, you know, refused to engage the opposition, refused to talk to the opposition, refused to negotiate with the opposition, and bent on terrorizing millions.
Stop talking for a moment, because there's a question that's coming towards you. Go ahead.
Dr. Marara.
Okay.
Yeah. The two protests, we should not conflict the two protests because they are different in nature. The Oromo protesters mostly were peaceful in some areas, and some places were violent. But the protesters in Amhara region were by their nature different because people were armed. We have seen there are videos and photos available online. So let's not mix the two. Those are different issues. Another point is that the protests are not in solidarity one to another. The two are different forces that are pulling Ethiopia.
I think the divide and the rule of the regime. Don't bring in the divide and the rule of the Ethiopian regime. You know, the Ethiopian regime was keeping away.
I just wanted to jump in here for a second and say this. Whenever we bring, you know, clash between these major big, you know, ethnicities in Ethiopia, the only party that benefits is the government in power. We understand there is historic grievances between the two groups, but we do have a solidarity in a sense that they're
asking so this is a really, Najat and guests, this is a really good point. So just take a pause for a moment, because if you're watching this on Al Jazeera, guests, give me a moment, everybody, just give me a moment. If you're watching this on Al Jazeera, you're thinking, Ethiopians are just having an unbelievably passionate conversation, row, debate. I don't even understand what people are protesting about. Let me share this with you. Some of the demands of the Oromo people. What are the demands of the Oromo people right now? Minister, are you aware of what the issues are that people are wanting within Ethiopia? Are you aware of that? I'm going to ask you very directly. What's your direct answer?
I think there is one misconception I have to dispel here.
Okay.
You are assuming that the entire Oromo people are protesting.
I didn't make that assumption.
Millions are protesting, Mr. Getachew. Millions, not a few thousand. Millions from Borana to Dambidolo, from Hara to
on fire.
Mariah, let me just finish this thought. Minister, I wasn't talking about a hashtag. I was just asking very directly. So we couldn't get lost here.
Look, can you hear me? Can you hear me, please?
Yeah, I hear you. I'm just not hearing the answer.
The Oromo people are the aspirations of the Amhara people, the aspirations of the people of Tigray, the people of Afar, which is to live in a country that protects their interests, to live in a country.
Please, Mr. Getachew, don't, you know, millions of people say to European, go away. Millions of people,
Mariah, just give me a moment. So, Minister, are you able, do you even know what people are protesting about? Minister, do you even know what people are protesting about?
Exactly,
yes, we do understand.
We do understand.
Mariah, allow me, please. What is your understanding about what people are protesting about?
Our understanding is those who are trying to protest peacefully in this country, be they in the Amhara region or in the Somali region or in Oromia region, are trying to make sure whatever benefits are accruing to many parts of the country are also things they can partake of. They want to.
But you are killing them, peaceful demonstrators.
That the rest of the
you are killing them, peaceful protesters, you know. That's Mr. Getachew, you want to kill in the room.
Take a moment, take a pause. This is not clarity. I apologise if you're watching this around the world. This is not clarity. We'll try and get some before the end of this show. Everybody just take a pause for a moment. Malika.
So the minister there was trying to answer what he believes protesters want. So here's another answer from Twitter. Fasiha says, the parliament is 100% controlled by the ruling party. There's no distinction between the party and the government, and the courts have no independence. The government often pretends as if the question is about good governance. This person goes on to say, Fakadu. But wider, this is about marginalizations against Oromos and denial of rights. Fatsum, do you recognize those grievances?
Yeah, there are legitimate grievances, especially the Oromo protests were a question of expanding the federalism, making sure that the federalism is not curtailed.
There is no federalism in Ethiopia. There is no federalism.
Dr. Najat, I am going to insist, if unless your name is Fetsum, you are not allowed to speak for this particular moment. Dr. Marara, Minister Najat, just allow me 30 seconds. I can hear Fetsum. Fetsum, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the two processes are a different issue. When talking about the Oromo protest, they were legitimate local grievances. The issues raised were local grievances mostly, and they were actually deemed legitimate by almost everybody, including the government, last I checked. So the question is not whether they are legitimate or not. The problem occurs how they were handled by the government and by the protesters. Because there were local officers that were shooting unduly, and there were violent protesters that were shown on social media and on videos.
The Agazi and the federal police are shooting, not the local police alone.
I am wondering, Guess, if this is maybe an issue, because these protests have been going on for month after month, year after year. Minister, what is the kind of dialogue you're having with protesters right now? Is there any dialogue?
We are having an extensive dialogue with the people of Oromia, with the people of Amhara, with the people of the entire country, because whatever issues people have, they have every right to raise it. But to do so in a manner that not only destabilizes the country, but also takes away the very rights, the very achievements.
Yes, you keep going over that. So we get that. What would be good, Dr. Marara?
Please, 1 point.
We have to make a fine distinction between two kinds of protesters. What we are saying is the kinds of protesters that are being pushed by
Minister, this is very repetitive. You made this point right at the beginning of the show.
This point should be clear.
No, you cannot interject. No, hold time for a moment. Because here's the thing. Guess. The whole world is watching, and this is chaos. You're not even talking to each other. You're talking across each other. Just hold tight for a moment. Just give me a moment. Marara, tell me about the dialogue.
You know, it is the EPRF regime, the Ethiopian government, which is destabilizing the country, not the people.
What is the conversation that you're having with the government?
I want to make it clear that it is Mr. Getacheo's government
made that very clear.
That destabilizing the country, leading the countries down to whatever, and terrorizing millions of people. Mr. Getachew should understand, this is not Ethiopian media, this is Al Jazeera.
This is problematic. This whole conversation is problematic. Guess, just give me a moment. Give me a moment again. How many moments do I need for clarity in this conversation? I need one more. Malika, how are people reacting to this?
Oh, wow. They're enjoying it, but there are a lot of angry people. So we're live on Facebook, and this is one of the comments we got. This person says, Mr. Getachew, you seem in denial. Millions have been deprived of their basic rights, and they're trying to find a scapegoat and blame it on the diaspora, meaning the government is, or whatever excuses they have is coming with a lack of accountability for those who are actually responsible.
See, this is what I'm interested in. Let me go to Fetsum for this. If your name's not Fetsum, please do not respond or talk. Fetsum, how does Ethiopia get out of this situation? Protests, some of them violent, people are dying, people have grievances, legitimate grievances. How does Ethiopia get out of this situation? Fetsum, go ahead.
We should all try to calm things down, including the government, the opposition parties, the activists, everybody should try to calm the temperature. And then we can discuss what to do. That's how it should be done. Because even if the government wants to do something or the oppositions have ideas, we can't implement it while there is continuous violence. So I'm sure the point has been made by the Oromo protests.
I hear you.
Let's now
Bahane, who you're listening to. Najat Hamza, thank you for being part of this conversation. Dr. Marara Gudina, we thank you as well. We are not even started with this conversation, so we are going to take the Minister of Communications Affairs to our online post show at stream.aljazeera.com. You want to debate with him, you want to ask him hard questions, he is available to you. Stream.aljazeera.com immediately after this show. See you there. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hello, welcome to our special online post show. Now, our community has been actively tweeting throughout the show with their questions and comments, so we want to give the Communications Affairs Minister, Gakacho Rado, the opportunity to address some of their concerns. Let's get right to it. Malika.
Well, I will start with this tweet from Jamal. He says, how on earth could a single party win 100% the parliamentary seats, and yet this could still be described as a democratic country? What's wrong with us, he says, using the plural there. What would you say to him?
Well, I would say I have to say that I'm not particularly proud of the fact that the ruling party won 100%, or at least ruling party, its affiliates won 100% of the seats. But ultimately, as I say, democracy is not just about the results. It's mainly about the process. And as far as we're concerned, we tried to make sure the process was free and fair. We tried to make sure all opposition parties canvassed during the election. Unfortunately, our opposition are very divided. And in an electoral system such as ours, where seats are won on a first past the post basis, whoever has performed better in terms of garnering not the plurality, not the majority, but at least in terms of comparison, much
Minister,
better votes, much larger votes gets the seats.
So your
and of course, that's
majority,
what happened.
explain what
But
your
the
majority is in the Ethiopian government, because it's an impressive majority. What is the majority?
Yeah, I mean, out of the 547 seats, I would say about 500 seats, 499 seats were won by the ruling party. But
Right.
the rest is also won by the parties which are not part of the ruling party, but
All right, so
affiliates
we
anyway.
started this conversation, Minister, with looking at the protests that just happened this weekend. There was violence, people were hurt, people have been injured, people have been killed. How do you propose to stop that from happening again?
Look, it's very unfortunate that we have not even been able to address the real issue, why this all is happening. Like I tried to say earlier, we have to make a fine distinction between people legitimately protesting because of
All right, so I'm going to push you, Minister. We spent half an hour. You spent half an hour saying that same thing over again. How do you propose to stop this happening again? Violent protests, people being killed. How do you propose to stop that from happening again?
The government is holding extensive discussions and consultations with the public. If it wasn't for the support of the public, some of the violent protests that were accompanied by even the use of guns could have spiraled out of control. So the government is working closely with the people, because ultimately the solution should come from the people themselves. And of course, the government is trying to do everything in its power to enlist the support of the public.
How are you doing
first
that?
And foremost,
I'm hearing a lot of anger and a lot of annoyance with the government. I'm not hearing that you're reaching out to people. Are you just keeping it undercover?
No. Look, we're reaching out. Wherever you go, see, the protesters, they would have you believe that the protesters were really massive. And if it was the case, it wasn't the action by the security forces which stopped the protesters. It was mostly the fact that the people were reluctant to condone the kind of violent practices that some of the protesters involved that stopped the entire violence.
All right, lots of people want to talk to you. Let's move on.
Minister, I just want to pivot here a little bit because we got this tweet from Michael. You were talking about the opposition being fractured and not really ready to step up to the plate. Michael here says that's because dissenting voices are in exile or they're locked up in prisons. Authorities don't tolerate even the mildest form of dissent. And I want to give you one example. Opposition member, Bekele Garba, we spoke to him at the stream last summer while he was on a speaking tour in the U.S. And when he returned to Ethiopia, he was rearrested. And previously, he had served already 3 years in prison. Why was he arrested? And others like him who have spoken out, but do they actually
represent
He was
arrested because he was suspected
threat?
of committing criminal activities. And he's having his day in court. I hope and expect the court will clear him if, in fact, he hasn't been involved in any criminal activity. All I can say at this point is whoever wants to effect democratic change in this country should do so in a manner that's consistent with the ordinary notions of
What
fair
is
play
that
and
manner?
justice.
Can you actually be critical of the government and not get in trouble? What does that look like to you?
Well, let me tell you this. Many government officials, we have proved again and again, that have been involved in maladministration, in corruption, and all kinds of activities that are contributing to the grievances of the people. And of course, the government is very, very clear that without addressing such grievances, without addressing maladministration within the government itself, it cannot.
What's the most
achieve
important
the kind of
grievance,
success.
Minister, that you're going to make as your priority on your priority list? What's the most important grievance that's right there that people will be able to say in a few weeks' time, a few months' time, this has been addressed? What is
government
right up there?
Government at all levels should be in the service of protecting the interest of the public, not in the business of protecting its own interests. So if the government at all levels fails to address the grievance of the public,
what's the
for
priority?
example, people need,
what's the priority, Minister?
the
What's right up
priority
there on
is
the top?
addressing good governance issues, because people
What?
are
Name
not
one.
getting the kinds of services that they deserve.
Okay.
People are
Basic
not.
services.
I mean, we have achieved significant economic progress, but
Right.
the distribution of wealth still has a long way to go before millions and millions of youth in this country actually see the real benefits of this progress. So we have to make sure that the distribution is such that people will feel represented in every arrangement. People will feel protected in terms of
See, if I was watching this and I was unhappy about my services, you're not convincing me that anything will change anytime soon. No specifics.
Well, I'll give you specifics. Look, we have at all levels identified corruption as one area. Projects which are meant to benefit the people. If government officials are involved in siphoning of funds that are meant to protect the interests of the people, of course, we have to take action against these officials. The government is also working with people to identify a series of governance issues that are bedeviling society at all levels and hold people responsible.
I just want to say, I asked specifics, and you said a series of issues that are affecting people on all levels. That's not specific.
Femi, specific, unless you have specific governance issues to point to, how am I going to give you specific examples?
Well, you're the government.
We are the government.
I'm just asking questions.
Tons of people have tons of grievances, believe me.
Yeah.
People
maybe too many to be too specific
about. All walks of life have different kinds of grievances. So it all depends on what sort of grievances people have. I mean, what we are trying to say is people, look.
All right, let me give you one. I have one. This is a big deal, and this came up when we were in a larger conversation. Internet and access to online is difficult and challenging, not existent. Why? That's a grievance. Communication is really hard.
Well,
that's a grievance right there.
Connectivity issues, we have to look at.
Well, there's connectivity issues, and then there's censorship issues. What are we talking about?
We have issues with regard to connectivity.
Yes.
The government has been trying to improve the services. The government has been working on spending, of course, a big deal of money to address this challenge. It's a work in progress. It's improving. But I would agree with you. Our performance in this regard has not been particularly stellar. But people deserve a measure of service that the rest of the world is capable of offering. And of course, the government will do in its power to make sure that that actually happens. But like I said,
Minister, I want to throw something else at you then.
This
is another
young
issue.
Democracy. We still have all kinds of problems.
A young democracy.
All kinds of challenges.
Online, I am hearing of those problems. I want to throw something else at you as my wrap up here. This is a comment we got. She says, I want to preserve the current stability I'm witnessing in the country. I believe Ethiopians, including in the diaspora, should focus on working on solutions. The government then has to cultivate the free political dialogue, but she sees progress. So speaking of that free political dialogue, this person, Hinak on Twitter, wants the answer to a direct question. He says, is the ruling party ready to sit and discuss and share power with opposition parties in and outside of the country?
Well, my friend Henok, I agree with Tzedeh, and also to a certain extent with Henok, that there has to be dialogue. By the way, this is a matter of survival. We cannot afford to hack our way out of impasse after impasse. If we fail to address the grievances of the public in a manner that satisfies
Are you
the youth.
succeeding right now,
If we
Minister?
fail to create mechanisms whereby people can vent their frustrations in a manner that doesn't affect the stability of the country, and then the survival of the country itself will be at stake. So what we are trying to do is to find a breathing space in which, with the support of the public, we can address the grievances. And of course, we have to work seriously on strengthening the democratic institutions in this country. We cannot say the progress so far has been a perfect one.
Minister, let me share this with you, because I don't want it to turn into a party political broadcast.
Both from
Minister,
within and from outside.
let me share this with
I
you,
don't think,
because you kindly said you would answer questions. Let me share this one with you. This is from Ray Rafi. Rafi says, trust me, all the main problem is favoritism. Only people who defend the government is only from TPLF. Why is that?
Well, you see, this is the kind of danger that's lurking behind most of our attempts at civil discourse, because people seem to think in terms of what is not on the ground. There are millions and millions of people in this country who support the ruling party, not because of ethnicity, but rather because it is protecting the best interest of the people, because the ruling party is composed of 4 regional parties which represent 4 ethnic groups, including the Amhara, the Oromo, the Tigray, and the Southern People's regional state. And if, to the extent that there is success, the success is achieved equally by all. To the extent that there are grievances, these grievances are more or less equally shared by all the people, irrespective of their ethnic backgrounds. But to try to characterize any level of support for the ruling party only in terms of ethnic background, particularly in terms of one ethnic group supporting this government, it doesn't reflect the reality on the ground. And of course, this has a very significant. This is one of the significant challenges we face when it comes to people who are trying to drive a wedge between different nations and nationalities in this country, for the sake of trying to bring about the kind of regime change or power sharing, whatever arrangement they might have in mind. And so what we are trying to do in this country is to make sure that the kind of change we are achieving affects positively all walks of life, people from all walks of life, people from backgrounds, both demographic, ethnic, or what have you, religious.
Minister,
and
there's
we
something,
know we are making
if people
progress,
watching,
but we know we have a long way to go before
people
achieving
would
the
be,
kinds of...
I hear you. People watching you speak on Al Jazeera, and there's an Ethiopia that in the developing world and is actually highly respected. What you've done in terms of development, what you've done in terms of health, is really respected in the developing world, across the African continent, across the world, full stop. And then you have issues with democracy, access to the internet, freedom of speech, protesting without being arrested, journalists in prison, a whole list of things that then does that make you embarrassed that there's a side of Ethiopia that is known to the world that isn't the success story of Ethiopia? Does not one take away from the other?
Look, while I know we have serious limitations to address, while I admit the government has a long way to go before resting on its laurels, both in terms of economic development and democratic governance, I, however, am proud of the performance of the government, because we have come a long way in addressing poverty and in creating a political order that is trying to fully accommodate the diversity of this country. By the way, the kind of economic progress this country has been achieving, which many believe is nothing short of astounding, could not have been achieved without a modicum of participation by the people, which requires some element of democratic exercise, if you will. But what we are saying is, of course, we have still a long way to go.
Yes, you just said that. Minister, great. I thought we come full circle now. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I have to thank you very much. It was a tough show for you to come on and talk to the guests about, the wider community about. You were definitely in the hot seat. We appreciate you being in the hot seat. Hopefully you will come back again. Thank you very much for being part of this.
Thank you. Addressing the problem of this country is much tougher, I should think, than appearing on Al Jazeera. Thank you.
Of course it is. Thank you very much.